My name is Jasmine. I'm 29 years old, and my mother tried to steal everything my father left me, then smiled in my face while plotting a family gathering that turned out to be an ambush. I still remember the exact moment I found out. I was sitting at my desk, sipping cold coffee, scrolling through emails, when I saw the subject line. Important family discussion, Sunday at 6 p.m. Be there. No greeting, no love, just a command. From my mom. After months of silence. That should have been the warning. But let me back up. I used to believe my family was close. Maybe not sitcom happy, but warm. We laughed at the same dumb movies. We took holiday photos every year, even when we were arguing 5 minutes before. I thought that meant something. My dad, Richard, was my world. He was quiet, the kind of man who showed love by showing up. He never missed a piano recital. Never forgot my birthday. When I cried after my first heartbreak, he just sat next to me, handed me tissues, and said, "The people who hurt you don't deserve your silence. Speak up." He died 2 years ago. Lung cancer. Stage 4. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. I held his hand the last night. He was struggling to breathe, but he turned to me and said, "Jazz, don't let them bully you. I made sure you'd be okay. Don't let anyone take that from you." At the time, I didn't know what he meant. I just thought he was talking about grief. Then the will was read, and everything shifted. He left me the house, the one he and my mom had bought together, yes, but he had inherited it from his parents and kept it in his name. He left me his savings, his life insurance, his retirement fund, everything. My mom got the beach condo they co-owned in Florida, her car, and a trust fund he'd already set up for her years ago. She was silent during the reading. Not sad. Not shocked. Just tight-lipped, like she was trying not to explode. That night, she texted me, "You're going to do the right thing. We'll talk soon." I thought maybe she meant about funeral arrangements, or going through his stuff. But no. When we met the next morning, she came right out and said it. "You need to sign over the house to me," she said, her voice cold and flat. "That was our house. Your father made a mistake, but you can fix it." My jaw dropped. "Mom, that's not what Dad wanted," he told me. "I don't care what he told you," she snapped. "I was his wife for 30 years. That house is mine. You have no idea what I gave up for this family." I couldn't believe it. Not even 24 hours after we bury him. "I'm sorry," I said, barely whispering. "But I'm not signing anything." Her face turned stone. And that was the beginning of the unraveling. At first, it was small things. She stopped answering my calls. My texts were read, but never replied to. She skipped my birthday, the first one without my dad, without even a card. Then came the comments through my brother, Ethan. "Mom says you're acting entitled. Mom said Dad always babied you. She's been crying a lot, Jasmine. I don't know why you're doing this." Doing what? Honoring Dad's wishes? Ethan was always the golden child. He could crash the car, and she'd blame the tree. I, on the other hand, once got grounded for forgetting to fold a towel. I used to think she was just strict with me because I was older. But as I grew up, I started to see it for what it was: control. Dad was my buffer. Now that he was gone, her mask started slipping. She started calling me selfish, saying I owed her for raising me, that the money Dad left was community property and shouldn't be in the hands of a child who barely visits. I was 29, working 2 jobs, taking night classes to finish my master's. I had paused everything when Dad got sick to take care of him, even moved back into the house to help. My mom? She stayed in Florida most of the time. "It's too hard to watch him waste away," she said. But now she wanted everything. The house, the accounts, even Dad's old car, the one he rebuilt himself. She said it reminded her of him, though she'd always hated that car. And through it all, she kept pushing the same line. "You'll do the right thing." Every family dinner I tried to organize got rescheduled. Ethan told me she was hurting, but I didn't see hurt. I saw cold calculation. Then came the final straw. One morning, I woke up to a letter slipped under the front door. Not mailed. Hand-delivered. It was a formal request to vacate the property, the house. My house. Signed not by her, but by her lawyer. The audacity. I called her. She didn't pick up. I left voicemails. Nothing. Then, 3 weeks later, I got the email. Subject: Important family discussion. Sunday at 6 p.m. Be there. No, please. No context. Just the kind of message you'd send to an employee you wanted to corner. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. I had a bad feeling, like the floor was about to collapse under me. But something in me, something my dad planted there, said I had to show up. If she wanted to ambush me, fine. But I wouldn't go down silent. And what happened that night? I wish I could say I was surprised. But I wasn't ready for just how far she would go. I arrived at my mom's house 10 minutes early. The same house I grew up in. The same house where we decorated the stairwell for Christmas, year after year. It felt like I was walking into a museum of a family that no longer existed. The lights were already on inside. Shadows moved behind the curtains. When I knocked, the door opened almost immediately, like she had been standing right there, waiting. My mother gave me a tight smile. "You're early. That's good." I stepped inside slowly. The living room looked different, rearranged, like she'd scrubbed the warmth out of it. Ethan was already sitting on the couch, arms folded, lips pressed tight. His wife, Lena, sat beside him, her eyes flicking nervously toward me. And then I saw Uncle Gary, my dad's older brother. He hadn't spoken to me since the funeral. Something was wrong. "Where's the rest of the family?" I asked, scanning the room. My mother shrugged, her lips curling into a half-smirk. "It's just us. This is a focused conversation. A trap." I knew it then. I didn't sit. I stood near the entryway, heart pounding. "Let's just get to it," I said. "You called a meeting. I'm here." My mom motioned to a stack of papers on the coffee table. "We've discussed some options. Fair compromises. Reasonable solutions." I blinked. "We." She nodded toward Ethan. "Your brother and I. And Gary's here as a witness." I turned to Ethan. "You knew about this?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's not what you think. We just want to talk." "About taking everything Dad left me?" I asked, voice rising. "Because if that's the topic, there's no compromise to be had." "You don't understand what you're holding on to," my mom said, her voice sugar-coated venom. "That house, those accounts, they were built on our sacrifices. Your father didn't do it alone." "I never said he did," I snapped. "But he made those decisions. Not me." "You're young. You'll bounce back," Uncle Gary chimed in. "Your mom's retirement is on the line. That house means security for her." "And me," I shot back. "Do I not deserve security too? I was the one who took care of Dad when he was dying. Where were you? All of you." The room went quiet. My mom's jaw twitched. "You always think you're the victim, Jasmine." "No," I said. "I was the caregiver. You were absent." That was when she dropped the first bomb. "You were never supposed to get everything," she said. "He changed the will behind my back. 2 months before he died. When he was already on medication." The implication stung. "You think I manipulated him?" I asked, stunned. He was clear. Lucid. We had those conversations for months. My mom stepped forward, voice low. "He was dying. He wasn't thinking straight. He was influenced. By me." She was accusing me of coercing my own father. I felt like I'd been slapped. "That's disgusting," I whispered. "You were always his favorite," she hissed. "He coddled you. Gave you everything. And now he's given you power you don't know how to wield." "I'm not signing the house over," I said. End of discussion. She picked up the papers. "This isn't just about the house." I froze. Then she spread the documents across the coffee table. I saw account numbers, balances, deeds, pages of legal jargon. She had everything printed. "You've been going through my inheritance?" I asked, stunned. Ethan shifted. "Mom was just making sure everything was accounted for." "She has no legal right to any of this," I snapped. My mom leaned forward. Unless we prove that you're not fit to manage it. Then a judge might think differently. I stared at her. You're threatening to go to court? To claim I'm unfit? If you force my hand, she said, voice silky. That was it. I grabbed my purse, turned toward the door. We're done here. Walk away now, she said behind me, and I'll assume you're refusing to work with your family. I didn't respond. I just walked out. My heart was racing. I barely made it to my car before my hands started to shake. I locked the doors, sat in silence, and tried not to cry. This was no longer about grief or misunderstanding. This was war. The next day, I got a text from my cousin Riley. Hey, your mom said you flipped out at the family meeting. Everything okay? I called her immediately. She's already spinning this? She said you threatened to cut ties with the family and that you were going to sell the house to strangers out of spite. I felt sick. None of that is true. She said you told her you never cared about anyone but your dad. Jesus, I muttered. She's rewriting everything. She also said you were talking to a lawyer. I blinked. I never said that. So they were digging, watching, twisting everything I said. That week, I started getting calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. One aunt accused me of ruining my mother's life. A cousin said, we all sacrifice for family. Why can't you? And Ethan? He posted a vague Facebook status. Some people care more about money than blood. It got likes, comments, sideways praise, little knife emojis in the shape of words. I felt isolated. Everywhere I turned, someone was telling me I was wrong, that I misunderstood, that Dad didn't mean it like that, that maybe I was being too emotional, that I should just be the bigger person. I wanted to scream. One night, I sat on the floor of the bedroom, Dad's old flannel in my lap, and just cried. Was I the villain here? Was I being greedy? Was I really tearing the family apart? Then I found the letter, a handwritten note, tucked in one of Dad's books. To Jasmine. Dated 6 weeks before he passed. If you're reading this, your mom is probably making things difficult. I'm sorry. I should have done more to prepare you. I know you'll do what's right, even if everyone turns on you. I trust you. Always. My throat tightened. That was the clarity I needed. I wasn't imagining this. He knew. He'd seen it coming. And he believed in me. The next day, I made a call. To a family friend, Mr. Wallace. He was my dad's former accountant. A gentle, no-nonsense man who never spoke unless he meant every word. Can we meet? I asked. I think I need help. When Mr. Wallace opened the door to his office, I nearly broke down. He looked exactly the same as I remembered, pressed shirt, calm expression, the kind of person you instinctively trust. I hadn't seen him since Dad's funeral. He didn't ask how I was, didn't offer condolences again. He simply said, "Come in, Jasmine. Let's get this figured out." We sat down across from each other, and I handed him the letter Dad wrote. He read it slowly twice. When he finally looked up, his expression was soft, but firm. I had a feeling something like this might happen. I swallowed. Did Dad talk to you about it? He nodded. Several times. He knew your mother would try to reverse everything after he passed. That's why he was so meticulous with the changes to the will. I have copies. Signed, notarized, witnessed. Tears blurred my eyes. He thought of everything. He did, Mr. Wallace said. He also made me promise I'd be here for you, if it came to this. I nodded, biting my lip. Well, it's come to this. I told him everything. The ambush meeting, the threats, the manipulation, the smear campaign she'd already started with the rest of the family, the fake concern, the passive-aggressive texts, the way Ethan and Uncle Gary tried to make me feel like I was crazy. Mr. Wallace listened patiently. No interruptions. When I finished, I leaned back, defeated. I feel like I'm being erased. He folded his hands on the desk. That's how gaslighting works, Jasmine. You're not crazy. You're being targeted. And then, gently, your mother is building a case, not a legal one, but a social one. She wants to discredit you emotionally so that if she ever does go to court, you're already painted as unstable. I blinked. She's been saying I'm too emotional, too reactive. He nodded. Textbook. I sat in silence for a few seconds, then whispered, "What do I do?" "You hold your ground," he said, "and you document everything." That night, I started saving everything, every text, every email, every message. I wrote down every memory I had from the meeting. I even started journaling my emotions, just to keep track of how things were affecting me. But the emotional weight? It kept building. A few days later, my mom texted me, "I know you're scared. We all are. Let's just talk. No pressure." I didn't respond. 2 hours later, "You're not making this easy. You're punishing me for things I can't undo." Then came the guilt trips. "I gave you life. I raised you. This is how you thank me." And the classic line, "Family is supposed to stick together. Your father would be ashamed." That one hit me the hardest. Because she knew. She knew how much I loved him. How much I clung to his memory, like a lifeline. She was weaponizing that love. I started getting phone calls from Aunt Tilda, my mom's older sister. Voicemail after voicemail. "You don't know how hard this is for your mother. She's grieving. She's scared. Your mom told me you're planning to kick her out of the house. Is that true? She sacrificed so much for you." The narrative was shifting. They were painting me as cruel, ungrateful, cold. I stayed silent. And in that silence, I became the villain in everyone else's version of the story. One morning, I walked into the grocery store and saw someone I vaguely recognized, Carly, a second cousin I hadn't seen since a family reunion years ago. She looked me up and down, shook her head, and muttered under her breath, "Unbelievable." I didn't even respond. I just turned around and left my cart behind. The shame sat on me like fog. I started feeling paranoid in public. Like everyone had heard a version of the story where I was a money-hungry witch who kicked her grieving mother into the street. At night, I cried until my chest ached. The house felt haunted, not with ghosts, but with memories. The smell of Dad's cologne still clung to the hall closet. His coat was still draped over the chair in the garage. His toolbox still had the tiny chip in the lid that he never bothered to fix. He trusted me. But everyone else? They were trying to make me feel like I was insane for honoring his wishes. There were days I thought about giving in, just signing it all over, letting them win, letting the storm pass. Wouldn't it be easier? Wouldn't it give me peace? But then I remembered the nights I held Dad's hand when he couldn't sleep. The way he looked at me and whispered, "You're stronger than you think."
No.
I couldn't let them rewrite the story. Then came Leah, my best friend since high school. We'd grown apart a bit, but when she heard what was happening, really happening, she showed up with a giant box of snacks, 2 bottles of wine, and a legal pad. "You're not doing this alone," she said. "Not anymore." I broke down in her arms. She let me cry, let me vent, let me feel the rage, the betrayal, the helplessness. Then she sat down, opened the legal pad, and said, "Okay, now we fight smart." We made lists of people who had witnessed how things really went down, including the months before Dad passed. Neighbors, nurses, old friends, people who knew the truth about who had been there and who hadn't. We printed every text, every email, every voicemail. We labeled them by date and topic. Then Leah looked at me and said something that stuck with me. "They're trying to make you feel like the villain because they know if you see yourself clearly, you'll be unstoppable." And just like that, something inside me shifted. I wasn't weak. I wasn't greedy. I wasn't heartless. I was the only one doing the right thing. The turning point came a few days later. I was scrolling through Facebook when I noticed a post from my dad's old friend, Tom, who used to work with him at the auto shop. He had shared a memory of my dad, a photo of them laughing, standing in front of a car they'd fixed together. I reached out to him. Just a message. Casual. He responded instantly. Within an hour, we were on the phone. And within 10 minutes of talking, he said, "You know, Richard told me months before he passed that he was worried your mom would try to take everything. He told me he was making changes to the will, and that he was leaving it all to you, not because he loved you more, but because he trusted you." My throat closed. Tom continued. He said you were the only one who ever showed up. I was quiet for a long moment. Then I asked, would you be willing to put that in writing? There was a pause. And then he said, absolutely. The day Tom sent over his written statement, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in weeks. It wasn't just a message. It was detailed with dates, places, and quotes from my dad. Tom even attached screenshots of old texts from my father, including one that said, if anything happens to me, Jasmine's in charge. Period. I'm making sure she's protected. That sentence alone made my hands shake. I forwarded the email to Mr. Wallace, and he responded in less than 5 minutes. Excellent. This is real leverage. We'll hold this close for now. I sat back and stared at my computer screen, heart pounding. Then I opened the drawer of my dad's nightstand, the one I hadn't touched since the funeral. I'd always been too scared to go through it, too afraid it would feel like disturbing a shrine. But now, I needed to look. Inside were old receipts, random tools, a flashlight, and, tucked into the side, a small, locked black box. I recognized it immediately. It was the one my dad used to keep things like insurance policies, medical info, and passwords. I remember him telling me once, if anything ever happens to me, the backup's in the black box. He'd even joked, don't forget, black like a spy briefcase. I found the key taped to the underside of the drawer. When I opened the box, my breath caught. Inside were several labeled envelopes. Insurance, life, pension statements, last will updates, notes, in case they challenged Jasmine. That last one nearly made me drop the box. I pulled it out slowly. It was thick, at least a dozen handwritten pages, front and back. The title on the first page said, For Jasmine, if things go sideways. I stayed up all night reading every single word. My dad had written everything out, his reasons for updating the will, his concern about my mom's behavior, the financial transfers he made, even backup copies of documents from his accounts. He explained that he had already gifted my mom the Florida condo 5 years prior as part of a trust, and that she had signed documents confirming it. That meant she had no claim to the house or his savings. He also mentioned things I hadn't known, like the fact that my mom had taken out large loans in secret and expected him to cover them, or that she had withdrawn money from a joint account to help Ethan through multiple failed business ventures, without discussing it with Dad. I loved your mother, he wrote, but I saw who she was when no one else was watching, and I know she will come after what I left you. That's why I've documented every step I took. I sobbed reading those pages. Not because I was sad, but because I felt seen. He knew. And more than that, he believed in me enough to leave a paper trail, to protect me from beyond the grave. I made copies of everything and stored the originals in a secure folder hidden in the house. Leah helped me scan every page and save it on an encrypted USB. Then I messaged Mr. Wallace. I have more. A lot more. Later that week, he invited me to his office again. I showed up with a stack of folders and the USB. He went through the documents quietly, his eyes scanning every line. Halfway through the handwritten notes, he paused and said, Jasmine, this changes everything. I looked up, hopeful. How? Your dad documented the pattern. The loans. The withdrawals. The previous gifts. The trust. Your mother has no legal standing to claim what he left you. If she tries to challenge it in court, we can prove bad faith. He flipped to the final page. And this is gold. It was a signed letter from Dad, dated 1 month before he passed. It said, My wife may claim that I was not of sound mind. I wanted on record that all changes were made willingly and that I was aware of every legal step. My doctors confirmed my mental clarity. I do not wish for my estate to be divided or reassigned. I leave full authority to Jasmine to manage and protect my legacy. Mr. Wallace looked at me and smiled. She has no case. But just as I began to feel safe again, something unexpected happened. I received a voice message from a number I didn't recognize. It was Ethan. He sounded nervous, like he was pacing. Hey, Jazz, look, I didn't know Dad wrote all that stuff. I thought Mom was just trying to claim what was fair. I swear I didn't know the full story.
Can we talk?
My stomach turned. Was he trying to apologize? Or fish for information? I didn't respond. Then came a follow-up text. She's planning something. She told Uncle Gary that she's going to call a family meeting. Everyone. She says she wants to reveal the truth and expose you. My blood ran cold. It was happening again. Another meeting. But this time, she was going to try and publicly shame me. Twist the narrative even further. Paint herself as the widow betrayed by her own daughter. I called Leah. She's planning another family ambush, I told her. Leah didn't hesitate. Good, she said. Let her. Let them all be there. Because this time you'll be ready. I gathered everything. Dad's letters. The updated will. The trust documentation. The screenshots from Tom. The financial records. The witness statements from the hospice nurse. Everything. I got in touch with a lawyer friend of Leah's, Amanda, a fierce estate attorney who agreed to be on standby. We prepared a binder of organized documents, labeled with tabs. We even rehearsed what I might say. But even so, I felt the anxiety creeping back. Because it wasn't just about facts or evidence. It was about facing the people who once loved me or claimed to. People who would sit across from me and call me a traitor, a thief, a heartless daughter. Could I really do this? Would I be strong enough? The day of the family meeting, I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself. Hair pulled back. Simple blouse. Binder in my hands. I didn't look like a warrior. I looked like a daughter just trying to survive. But when I stepped outside and saw Leah waiting in the car, giving me a thumbs up, I smiled. This time, I wasn't alone. And this time, I wasn't afraid. The meeting was set for 7 p.m. on Saturday. This time, my mom sent out a more formal invitation, an email with the subject line, "Family Transparency Meeting, please arrive on time." She even added a quote at the bottom. "Families are about unity, not division. Let's find truth together." I almost laughed. This wasn't about unity. It was about domination. Control. She wasn't seeking truth. She was setting the stage to smear me in front of every relative she could round up. But I'd be ready. For the next 3 days, Leah and I lived like we were building a case for court. Because in many ways, we were. Amanda, Leah's lawyer friend, coached me over the phone each night. She taught me how to de-escalate, how to document every verbal exchange, and how to redirect gaslighting in real time. Facts are your shield, she said. But calm is your sword. Stay calm, and they'll unravel on their own. I printed every document and placed it into 3 identical binders, one for me, one to bring out if needed, and one to give someone trustworthy in the room if things went sideways. Leah also helped me record a just-in-case video, where I explained the full story, from Dad's diagnosis to the will update, to the harassment afterward. We time-stamped it, encrypted it, and backed it up in 2 locations. "I'm not letting them erase you," she said. By Friday night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my chest tight, stomach hollow. All I could think was, what if it all backfires? What if the truth doesn't matter? What if they don't want the truth, just a villain to unite against? And then I remembered Dad's voice in that hospice room. "Speak up. The people who hurt you don't deserve your silence." So I whispered into the dark, "I'm not staying silent." Saturday afternoon, Leah arrived early. She brought snacks because she said if we were going into battle, we weren't doing it hungry. She also brought 2 power banks, a second phone with a recording app, and a tiny lapel mic she clipped discreetly onto the inside of my shirt collar. Just in case. I wore dark jeans, boots, and a light gray blouse, neutral, calm. My hair was tied back tightly. No jewelry, no distractions. Just me and the truth. Amanda texted at 5:30. "I'm on standby. If anything escalates, call me." Leah and I reviewed the binders one last time. Each section was labeled. Will documentation. Medical records. Handwritten letters. Witness statements. Trust agreement. Family financial activity. Contradictory messages from mother. "Facts are stacked," Leah said, closing the binder. Now it's just delivery. By 6:15, we got into the car. I held the binder like it was a life vest. My mom's house was only 20 minutes away, but the drive felt eternal. Every stoplight was a countdown. I kept replaying memories in my head: birthday cakes, Christmas mornings, family dinners. All the times I tried to earn her love, her approval, her warmth. And now I was preparing to confront her for stealing from me. At 6:50 p.m., we pulled up to the driveway. The house was lit up like a stage. Too bright. Too ready. There were at least 6 cars parked out front. I recognized Uncle Gary's pickup, Aunt Hilda's silver Prius, and Ethan's black sedan. There were a few others I couldn't place, distant relatives maybe. My stomach clenched. I turned to Leah. "If I freeze or lose my temper." "You won't," she said. "You're not there to win their love back. You're there to speak your truth." I nodded. She handed me the binder. "Let's go." The front door opened before we could even knock. My mom stood there, smiling. That smile. The one she used at funerals and PDA meetings. Perfectly polished. Cold underneath. "Well," she said, "I see you brought backup." "Hi, Mrs. Whitaker," Leah said pleasantly. "I'm just here to support Jasmine." My mother's smile tightened. "Of course." She stepped aside. "Come in. Everyone's waiting." The living room had been rearranged. Chairs in a circle. A coffee table with printed agendas, actual agendas, labeled family discussion, inheritance, and healing. I felt bile rise in my throat. Around the circle were Uncle Gary, Aunt Tilda, Cousin Melanie, Ethan and Lena, my mother, and 2 other people I didn't recognize immediately. My mom waved a hand. "That's Pastor Edwin from my support group and his wife, Marla. They're just here to mediate." "Pastor?" She brought witnesses of her own. I turned to Leah, who gave me a subtle nod. "Stay steady. Let's begin," my mom said brightly, like she was leading a seminar. She motioned to a stack of folders on the table, her own evidence. "We're here tonight to discuss Jasmine's inheritance situation, which, as many of you know, has caused great pain and confusion in this family." "Pain and confusion?" she continued. "I believe in transparency, and I believe we owe each other honesty. That's why I've asked you all here, not to attack, but to seek resolution." I sat down slowly, binder in my lap. My mom turned toward me with a practiced expression of sadness. "Jasmine, would you like to say anything before I share what I've found?" I met her gaze. "Yes." "I'll let you go first." She blinked, surprised, then nodded, and began. She spoke for 10 minutes. She laid out her version of events like a lawyer making a closing argument. She said Dad had been confused in his final months. She said the will was changed suspiciously, without her knowledge. She said I had taken over the home and excluded her from grieving properly. She implied, without saying directly, that I had coerced a dying man. And she ended with this: "I don't want to fight. I just want fairness. And healing." The room was silent. Then she turned to me. "Now, Jasmine, please, your side." I looked at every person in the circle, and slowly I opened the binder. I opened the binder slowly, deliberately. The sound of the rings snapping apart was louder than I expected, and in that moment, it felt like I wasn't just opening a binder, I was opening a door no one wanted me to walk through. I pulled out the first tab section. Dad's updated will. "This," I said calmly, "is a certified copy of the will Dad updated 6 weeks before he passed. It was filed through his attorney, witnessed, and notarized. It names me as the sole beneficiary of the family home, his personal savings, his retirement accounts, and the car. He made these decisions while fully aware, while lucid, and while consulting professionals." I handed a copy to Leah, who stepped forward and placed it in the middle of the circle. Pastor Edwin reached out to glance at it, lips pressed tight. My mother scoffed lightly. "We've all seen that will, Jasmine. That's not new." "Then let's talk about why it matters," I said, pulling out the next document. Dad's letter of intent. "In case any of you are under the impression that Dad didn't know what he was doing, here is a handwritten, sign letter in his own words, stating exactly why he made these changes. He also anticipated that Mom might challenge the will or misrepresent his decisions. I passed out the copied letter, watching as hands moved stiffly to take them. Aunt Tilda furrowed her brow, reading the first page slowly. Ethan's wife, Lena, glanced between it and my mom. "This is dated," she muttered. "And signed." I could see the cracks forming already. But I wasn't done. "Next," I said, flipping the binder again, "we have medical documentation." I placed them on the table one by one. These are from Dad's hospice team, confirming his mental clarity during the last 2 months of his life. He was competent. He was careful. He wasn't confused, he was deliberate. Pastor Edwin cleared his throat. "These are from the palliative care provider?" "Yes," I said. "And they've provided written confirmation of their observations." I pulled out the financial records next. This section shows how my mother had already received her share of assets. The Florida condo was gifted into her name through a trust 5 years ago. She also had access to a separate account Dad created for her, which she withdrew from without informing him in the final year. Uncle Gary shifted uncomfortably. I turned to him. "You knew about that account, didn't you?" He froze. "Dad mentioned in the letters," I said. "You co-signed a loan using it as collateral." Leah stood just behind me, arms crossed, watching everyone's expressions shift from smug to uncertain. Then I brought out the final envelope. Inside were 3 printed pages of text messages and voicemails from my mom, guilt-tripping, pressuring, threatening me to hand everything over. I placed those on the table last. "These were sent to me after the funeral," I said. "They show a pattern of coercion and psychological manipulation." Pastor Edwin glanced at my mother. "These came from your number?" My mom's eyes narrowed. "I was grieving," she said. "I was emotional." "That doesn't make them go away," I replied. The room fell into a thick silence. Ethan was the first to speak. His voice was quiet, like he was suddenly unsure of where he stood. "Why didn't anyone tell me about the Florida condo?" he asked Mom. She looked at him sharply. "It wasn't relevant." "It is now," he said. Aunt Tilda folded her arms. "Wait, you already got a condo and a trust? And you're trying to take the house too?" "It was my house," my mother snapped. "No," I said. "It was Dad's inheritance from his parents. He kept it in his name, and he made a legal decision to leave it with me." "And what about family?" my mom said suddenly, rising to her feet. "What about loyalty? What about me? I raised you, Jasmine. I sacrificed everything for you." "I didn't ask for that sacrifice," I replied. "And love isn't a transaction. You don't raise a child and expect to collect payment decades later. You're ungrateful." "No," I said. "I'm done being manipulated." She opened her mouth again, but I raised a hand, calmly, not aggressively, and continued. "Every person in this room has been told a story about me. That I stole. That I twisted Dad's wishes. That I turned against the family." I looked around. "But now you have the full picture. The documents. The statements. The truth. You can believe what you want, but I'm done defending myself against lies." Leah stepped forward. "And just to clarify, if this harassment continues, legal action will be pursued." Pastor Edwin looked unsettled. Marla, his wife, leaned toward my mom and whispered something in her ear. My mom's face was red now, jaw clenched, breathing shallow. She realized she had lost the room. Uncle Gary stood slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, not to me but to the room. "I didn't know about the trust. Or the letter. I thought." "You thought what Mom told you," I said quietly. "And you didn't question it." He nodded, shame flickering across his face. Aunt Tilda sighed. "This isn't about fairness. It's about pride." She wanted to control the story. And Jasmine wouldn't let her. No one said anything for a long time. And then my mom, still standing, still trembling, looked right at me. "You've turned everyone against me." "No," I said. "You did that, Mom. When you turned on me." She didn't speak again. Not when people started gathering their things. Not when Pastor Edwin stood up and said quietly, "This isn't what I thought I was walking into." Not even when Ethan finally met my eyes and murmured, "I didn't know. I really didn't." She just stood there, silent, burning, defeated. And I stood up, tucked the binder under my arm, and walked out. The air outside was cold and still. Leah followed me, and once we were in the car, she looked over and asked, "How do you feel?" I stared out the window for a moment, then said, "Like I finally remembered who I am." The next morning, my phone lit up with messages. Not from my mom, not from Ethan or Uncle Gary, but from everyone else who had been at the meeting. "Thank you for speaking your truth, Jasmine. I had no idea your mom was hiding so much. I owe you an apology. I believe her story without hearing yours." Even Pastor Edwin messaged. "That was difficult to witness, but necessary. You handled it with strength and grace. If you ever need a character statement, I'd be honored to provide one." I stared at my screen in disbelief. For the first time since this nightmare began, people were finally seeing the truth. And not just believing me, acknowledging what they had allowed to happen. How they had stood by while I was isolated, slandered, emotionally cornered. And now the lies were collapsing under the weight of facts. Leah and I sat on the porch that afternoon with tea in hand and the binder resting on the table between us like a trophy. She looked over at me and smiled. "You did it." I nodded, exhaling. Almost. Because as satisfying as the confrontation had been, there were still loose ends. And I didn't want to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. So we made a decision. I filed an official cease and desist through Amanda's law office. It was formally delivered to my mother's home 2 days later, warning her against further harassment, misrepresentation of the estate, or manipulation of family members on my behalf. It was clean, professional, and powerful, because it meant if she kept pushing, she'd end up in court. For the first time, I held the leverage. And that's when the final message came in. It was Ethan again. This time, his tone was different. No more vague apologies or evasive language. Just pure honesty. She told me she was going to claim Dad was unstable. She even wrote out what she wanted me to say in court. "I'm sorry, Jasmine. I didn't want to lose her approval. But now I see it, she was using all of us to corner you." I didn't respond immediately. He messaged again an hour later. "If you ever want me to write a statement, I will. You don't have to forgive me. But I'm not going to stay silent anymore." I sat there reading it over and over. And then I realized something strange. I didn't feel angry anymore. Not at him. Not even at Uncle Gary or Aunt Tilda or the cousins who'd piled on without asking for the full story. Because I finally understood the root of it all. Fear. They feared my mom's wrath. Her manipulation. Her power to control the narrative and exile anyone who stepped out of line. But I had broken that spell. Not just for myself, but for the others too. 3 days after the confrontation, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Handwritten. Messy. It was from my mom. Inside was a stack of papers, loosely gathered. Bank statements. A half-hearted handwritten letter. And a sticky note that said, "Maybe you were right. I just wanted to feel like I mattered." That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of the lies, the pressure, the emotional warfare. Just a note of sadness. And strangely, I didn't feel satisfaction reading it. I just felt done. Done waiting for the apology I deserved. Done hoping she would change. Done hoping she would ever see me without trying to shape me into something convenient. I folded the letter and placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because it was proof of something I never wanted to forget. Even after all the evidence, all the exposure, all the unraveling, some people will never take responsibility for what they've done. And that's not my burden anymore. Over the next few weeks, something remarkable began to happen. I started sleeping through the night again. The panic attacks eased. I stopped checking my phone expecting another guilt trip message or character assassination on social media. The air in the house felt lighter, not because anything had changed physically, but because I had reclaimed it. I repainted the living room. I donated Dad's old tools to a local vocational program, one he used to volunteer at. I turned the spare bedroom into a reading nook. And slowly, piece by piece, I started turning the house into mine. Not out of disrespect, but out of healing. Out of love for the man who trusted me with it. Out of gratitude for the girl who didn't cave when everyone told her to. And then came the most unexpected full-circle moment of all. One of my younger cousins, Melanie's daughter, Ava, messaged me. She was 17, and we'd never been especially close. But she'd been at the meeting that night, sitting quietly in the back, wide-eyed. She wrote, "I've been scared of your mom since I was little. She always made me feel like I had to be perfect. Seeing you speak up made me realize I don't have to stay silent when someone's hurting me." I blinked. She continued, "I know it's not my place, but I'm proud of you." I cried reading that, because it reminded me that even when you think no one sees your strength, someone somewhere does. Even if it's a 17-year-old girl watching quietly from the corner of a room. 1 week later, Amanda sent me the final email. "Everything has been processed and documented. Your legal standing is ironclad. They have no claim, and any further attempt to interfere will be treated as harassment. You're in the clear." I forwarded the message to Leah with the caption, "We did it." And she responded, "No, you did it. I just brought snacks." That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on the back porch, and opened Dad's old notebook, the one he used for ideas and dreams he never got to finish. Inside the cover, in his handwriting, was a quote I'd never noticed before. "The truth is quiet, but it outlasts the noise." I closed my eyes and smiled, because I finally understood what that meant. It's been 9 months since that night in my mother's living room. 9 months since I stood up with nothing but the truth in my hands and watched a legacy of lies begin to unravel. And honestly, I don't regret a single second of it. Was it painful? Yes. Was it lonely? Absolutely. But would I go back and do it differently? Not a chance. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't fold. I didn't play the good daughter. I didn't silence myself to make others comfortable. I didn't let their guilt trips shape my identity or rewrite my father's legacy. Instead, I learned who I really am. A lot has changed since then. Ethan and I are slowly rebuilding a relationship, not out of obligation, but out of shared growth. He wrote a public letter to the family, acknowledging his role in the ambush, apologizing for his silence, and making it clear he would no longer be a part of Mom's manipulation. It didn't fix everything, but it meant something. He and Lena had their second child last month. They named her Eliza Richard, a middle name in honor of our father. When he texted me to tell me, I cried. Not because I'd forgiven everything, but because I'd finally stopped carrying it. Uncle Gary apologized too. He even offered to help renovate the house. I politely declined, but the gesture mattered. Aunt Tilda sent a gift card with a note that said, "For new paint and new peace." And my mother? We haven't spoken since her envelope arrived. She didn't show up to the mediation hearing Amanda offered. She didn't respond to the cease and desist. She's quiet now. And I don't mean that cruelly. I just mean for once in my life, she's no longer taking up space in my mind. I used to dream of hearing the words, "I'm sorry. I was wrong." But now, I've stopped needing them. I've made peace without her permission. I've started writing. Not just journaling, but really writing, turning the pain into something meaningful. Stories. Essays. Pieces about grief, betrayal, survival, and healing. And recently, a women's platform asked to publish one of them. The title? "The Truth Outlasts the Noise." Dad would have liked that. I kept some of his things. His old watch. The wrench he never cleaned. The last letter he wrote me, the one in the black box. But I've also let go of a lot. Old guilt. Old fears. The constant ache to be chosen, seen, loved by people who only saw me as useful. Because here's what I've learned. You can be a good daughter and still say no. You can love your family and still protect yourself from them. You can walk away from the people who raised you if staying means betraying yourself. And most importantly, you are allowed to protect what was left for you. Whether that's a home, a will, a legacy, or your peace. To anyone listening who's been made to feel guilty for choosing themselves, to the daughters, sons, and grandchildren labeled ungrateful for honoring boundaries, to those who've been painted as selfish for protecting what's rightfully theirs, I see you, and you are not alone. Sometimes, the greatest act of love isn't forgiveness, it's freedom. Sometimes, protecting a legacy means confronting the people who tried to steal it. And sometimes, healing doesn't look like reconciliation. It looks like a woman repainting her father's house in quiet colors. It looks like eating dinner alone and knowing you're at peace. It looks like waking up one morning and not checking your phone in dread. It looks like writing your own story and not apologizing for it. My name is Jasmine Whitaker. I'm 30 years old, and I didn't just protect my inheritance. I reclaimed my voice, and I will never give it away again. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. Thank you for listening.